Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Real Talk, Gen X and Y, and Race in America, a virtual conversation between young women of color as they navigate through the emotional impact of systemic racism following the attacks in 2020 and the racial injustices we've seen over the past year. This discussion is presented by Shades Magazine, celebrating all women of color, an online publication and information and resource site sponsored by Exceptional Women in Publishing, also known as EWIP. My name is Michelle FITZHUGH-CRAIG, and I am president of the EWIP Board of Directors and the publisher founder of Shades Magazine. And I'm beyond excited because today, as you see the little balloons behind me, we are celebrating our first birthday, our first anniversary. And it's been 12 months since we came in with this idea. And Sydney came on board, and it's just been it's been an experience. And Sydney, I want to bring you on real quick, our host, and I'll officially introduce you, but I think everyone does know you. But did you want to say anything regarding, our birthday, our 12 months, this experience, I guess it was a pilot program. Now we're picked up for season 1 or season 2.
I'm gonna say a saying that me and Mignon went to high school together, and our math teacher, Mr. Walters, would always say, "Time flies by when you're having fun." And so I think that's how this experience has been like. Time has just flown by, and it has been fun, and it has been super rewarding, both I think on my end and the panelists that we have every month. I've learned so much. I've learned so much about the panelists and the other people and guests who have joined us. So it has been super rewarding, and I'm excited to continue to have more talks.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's been fun, and I thank you. I thank all the ladies, but you especially for just kind of taking this on. And when you watch these videos, I will do a lot as far as talking now and putting them together. But Sydney is the one who does a lot of the research. She comes up with the questions. She wrangles the ladies together and find out who can speak what month. And it's been, so much that she's done, and I appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to year 2. So let's move on. Before we get started, I'd like to get some housekeeping matters out of the way.
Sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
Sorry. Our producers have muted your mic. However, if it is not, please be sure to mute your microphone. For those new to Zoom, you can find the toolbars at the top of your screen or hovering your mouse along the bottom of your screen. There you can find the chat room and other tools you may need or want during today's talk. If you have comments or questions for today's guest, you may place them in the chat and they will be read by today's host. You can decide if you want to be anonymous asker, or we will use your name, first name at least. Feel free to disable your video if you so choose. We also have a lot of viewpoints and opinions that will be shared today. A reminder to be respectful of all guests and all participants. It is important to note that Shades Magazine and its fiscal sponsor, EWIP, is a non-political, nonpartisan organization, and as an entity does not support or endorse any political candidates or campaigns. The opinions, viewpoints, and or personal endorsements expressed in any published print, audio, or video content are those of the individual only and do not necessarily represent the views of Shades Magazine or Women in Periodical Publishing, which is EWIP. We are recording today's session for viewing on the Shades website and our YouTube channel early next week. Today, we're talking about colorisms and stereotypes, how we view ourselves as BIPOC and or PoC. And this is our second conversation on this. We talked in April, I believe it was, and felt it was important enough to bring it back. This will be an honest and a safe discussion, and please respect, as I said before, all viewpoints on that. I'd like to turn it over to Sydney officially. She is a New Orleans native, is a multimedia freelance and recent graduate student of the University of Maryland, College Park, who in May received her master's in multi-platform journalism. Sydney also is a contributing editor for Shades Magazine. Welcome, Sydney, again.
Michelle, for that introduction, and I'm so excited to be here on the first anniversary or the inaugural anniversary of Real Talk. And so I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists today. Two will be coming on shortly, but I'll start with Mignon BLANC, who's an imaging account manager with GE Healthcare living in Los Angeles, California. And we also have SHARKISHA CUMMINS, who's a stay-at-home mother of two and aspiring writer and social worker living in Rochester, New York. And KERRI EBANKS should be hopping on shortly. So when she hops on, I will briefly introduce her. And then I'm sure some of you know ASIFA, who hops on every now and then on our Real Talk call. So she will be joining much later on her lunch break. So when she hops on, I'll also introduce her. And so typically what I like to start, thank you ladies for joining. I like to start with an opening question to everybody. And because it's, a heavy controversial topic, we thought that we would open up with something light. And so the question is, what stereotype that relates to your ethnicity makes you laugh or shake your head?
I feel like all of the food stereotypes for Black people make me laugh because I don't really like watermelon. It's not really my favorite thing. And every time I hear that, I'm like, I guess I'm not in that number. It's not my favorite. And also, there was another example that I was thinking of that comes to food. Oh, spicy food. I'm not a big spicy food person. So I feel like the stereotypes towards Black people as far as our diet and cuisine, it's comical to me because it does not cover all of the bases by all means.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. And before we move on, we just have KERRI EBANKS, who just hopped on the call. And she is a digital manager for the Washington State Democrats based in Seattle. So welcome, KERRI. We just started, so no worries. And we just started with our opening question, which is, what stereotype that relates to your ethnicity makes you laugh or shake your head?
Has everyone answered already?
Just Mignon, so you're good.
Okay, I'll pass that and let someone else answer really quickly while I think about that.
Gotcha.
I can go ahead and answer next. The food one is a good one because I don't like chicken. And people are always like, oh my gosh, chicken. I'm just not a fan. I think part of it is because I ate it so much growing up because it's like a really poor person thing that I don't like it at all. It's not my thing. Occasionally I do like the party wings like at the club or at the bar or whatever. And I think it's because it's so coated in all these other sauces that like you kind of forget that you're eating chicken. But like, just know with the chicken, it's steak. I'm a steak girl. I'll eat beef all day. If I never eat another piece of chicken, I'm okay with that. Additionally, I can't dance. I have no rhythm at all. I try, and if I'm in a space where I'm like the only Black person, I can kind of fake it a little, and sell it, but I can't dance. I can't. So, it's not something I can do.
Thank you, SHARKISHA. KERRI, have you thought of one yet?
Yeah, I think for me, maybe, it's like that most Black women don't wear their real hair. And that makes me laugh because A, like it doesn't matter. B, most women in society today actually don't often wear their real hair, no matter race, class, ethnicity, whatever it is. Like you will meet women from all different ages, all different levels, all different classes. and they have a clip in here, a piece there. Like, it's just how we define ourselves, and it's how we extend what we see as beauty, right? Like, it's how we extend what we find that's beautiful in ourselves. And I think that's hilarious, because I've definitely tricked some people where I'm like, no, this is like not my real hair. And then there are other times I'm like, yeah, this is all me. Like, look how fast it grew. Also, like, you know, even if my hair looks the same, it's like a different color in 1 week, I'm like, yep, just dyed it for 2 weeks. Like, listen, that is the one game that I will play along with. What is going on with my hair? I will play along with that game as long as I can.
I remember in high school, I think it was my junior year, and I had gotten like, you know, a fresh sew-in. And so the day before, you know, obviously my hair is not that long. You know, I got it like to here, like past my shoulders. And so the next day when I came into class, my English teacher, Miss Carden, was like, Sydney, did you grow your hair overnight? And I'm like, oh yeah, Miss Carden, yeah, totally. And I was just like, okay, like, you know, this is just something that we go through, you know, as Black women who constantly get their hair, you know, switched up and things like that. So that's just something that makes me laugh. Any other comments before we move on to an article that Michelle found? All right, Michelle.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I just wanted to read this and give our speakers food for thought as for this conversation. I think a lot of it will hit home. It was a Bustle magazine article, actually from November 2014. And we actually, I read it last night on our Real Talk Plus Friday nights on Clubhouse, 7 p.m. Pacific time. But this young woman, she was talking about dating and just, you know, growing up, how she used to, everyone, her classmates would always be bronzing and putting things on their skin. And she wanted to avoid it. She stayed inside so much because she did not want that dark skin because what it would mean. And she offered 5 things that she learned and 5 things that we should consider in thinking about colorism. And the first one was colorism doesn't just affect those with dark skin, which is true. 2, colorism doesn't only affect women. 3, colorism is not specific to the Black American community. 4, colorism starts with our media, institutions, and ourselves. And the last one is colorism is not an acceptable form of racism, which, you know, really goes deep. We say things thinking it's okay, and it's really not. So I just wanted to put those out there. And if anyone had any comments on, you know, any of them, I'm going to put them in the chat too. Feel free to do that before Sydney moves on.
And now I'm going to open up with the video that I found on YouTube, and the title is Dark Skinned Girls on Colorism. And this is an international video based in the UK. So one sec while I share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah, all good.
Awesome. All right, I'll press play.
Colorism is being told to use skin lightening cream when a guy says, I only want to date a peng lighting. When there's no foundation for a dark skinned girl, but 50 shades of beige. Want to know what colorism is? Well, let us break it down for you. Colorism is the prejudicial or preferential treatment of same-race people based solely on their color. Racism is about race, but colorism is about how dark your skin is. Racism usually comes from people from a different ethnic group, but colorism, that can come from anywhere, even from someone from the same ethnic group as you. Guys, there's so many videos, like all the like video vixens. I feel like the hottest ones are always the light-skinned girls. If there is a dark-skinned girl in it, she's usually got problems. She's usually, you know, the one they're trying to get rid of, or the one that's just, you know, just too much. Growing up in the stuff I consumed, the light-skinned girl was always the main character, and if there was a dark-skinned girl, she was usually the sidekick, and she was usually quite angry. And I think even now, that's still an issue. For example, in Dear White People, we have the typical light-skinned main character and the dark-skinned sidekick.
Like, I just remember a setting with just these two actresses, or like just brown people. Out of nowhere, you would have like these white dancers come and start dancing behind them and doing like these dance moves, like Indian dance moves. It's like, yo, where's my Indian homies at? Where's my Indian girls at? There's one film that I remember where the guy sings that she's Gauri Chitti, which means she's white. She's white. Like, there's repeatedly saying that, oh, like, she's so beautiful, she's fair and lovely. When I saw that, I was shocked. I was like, whoa, like, you hear about these things, but you don't actually see it. When you see it, you're like, whoa.
At 13 or 14, though, like, you've got no money, you can't spend £30 on that. The only thing I could buy was Dream Atmos cocoa, and it was so thick and horrible and orange.
I remember being on set and the makeup artist using a foundation, a mineralizer that's like so many shades lighter than I actually am.
And like, if you were to put it on your face and there was a flash, that was slag line central, because you're never going to be that orange. Boys I was friends with would say stuff like, being tan, that's like the perfect skin tone. It's not uncommon to hear Nigerian guys back home say, in order to marry her, she has to be a graduate, intelligent, and yellow.
I remember a work colleague saying to me that I'm quite dark skinned for a Punjabi girl. And that just goes to show like the beauty ideals within the South Asian community that men have, like, that are just so detrimental to like the self-esteem of women. You know, just the little things from like seeing the artwork that like, my grandma had. Like, you see fairer skinned women in these images. I think it's not just Punjabi households, it's just, you know, Asian households in general. Like, lighter skin was always championed, and like they would always maybe like introduce some sort of lightening cream or like, you know, methods to help lighten or clean your skin to make you lighter. Colorism is peak.
But don't get us wrong, we're not trying to hate on light-skinned people of colour. We just want to be who we are unapologetically.
You are valid no matter what skin you're in.
No matter what skin you're in. No matter what skin you are in. So colorism is the preferential.
All right. And so, do any of y'all have initial thoughts after viewing the video, or any experiences relating to what the video touched on that you would like to discuss?
I can go. I think the video was pretty much spot on with as far as like the colorism goes in the community. I know in the Black community, it is kind of a big thing, and even in the Spanish community, like, I don't know if anybody here speaks Spanish, or if you watch novelas, you'll see like the dark-skinned people are usually like just relegated to like the housemaids and stuff, or they play those roles where they're just kind of like secondary, they're like second-class citizens, they're villains. So it does like happen a lot, even not even just in the Black community, but in the Spanish community, but also in the Black community. I've experienced it where, you know, they'll be like, and I've heard like my brother-in-law tell my niece, like, you're already dark enough, get out of the sun, or it's used as a slur, like, with your black A or whatever, it's used in a derogatory, negative way, implying that the darker you are, the less feminine you are, you know, the less attractive you are, the less, you know, you're bitter, all these things are ascribed to you because of the color of your skin. And you often see it too, portrayed in media. they're darker. They always have like the dark skinned women and these really negative, bitter trope roles of angry baby mama, you know, just trying to take advantage of this person, or they're playing roles where there's like trauma, you know, like Underground Railroad, or I forget what that new Amazon show is. I refuse to watch it, but basically whenever you see like a cast of dark skinned people together, they're going through some trauma, you know, they're slaves running through the fields, getting whooped or something like that. You never really, except for maybe Black Panther, see Black people that are dark and the positive light in the film, even when the roles were made for them. That Mockingbird movie, that little girl, Rue, was supposed to be really dark skinned, color of ebony. And the person that they used to portray her was someone in mixed race. They went out of their way to find someone extremely like going against what that author had put in their book of how they wanted that character to be portrayed. And it was because of like where she was from, her colony, there were all people who looked like her, but they just completely ignored that because they just think, you know, it didn't fit in with the narrative. They wanted to have her be vulnerable and likable, and they didn't think that they could do that if she were dark skinned. So, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. And I mean, you know, I was a big fan of Hunger Games, you know, the trilogy. So, you know, the fact that that was happening behind the scenes, you know, that's really telling. Does anyone have any other thoughts about that or anything else they saw in the video?
Yes, I do. It's funny, this actually happened last week. I believe I was in the store and I was walking down the aisle and wasn't paying attention, and this man came up to me. He's like, "Excuse me," he's the Black guy. Like, "Excuse me, are you Ethiopian?" I'm like, "No, sir, I'm not." "Thank you, I guess. No, I'm from New Orleans. I'm not Ethiopian." And he was like, "Oh, okay, okay." And he started rambling. Oh my God, this man was talking my ear off. And it's like, "I've been all over the world. I've been to Africa. And, you know, it's a common misconception that all Black men want white women, when that is not true. That is not true at all. I've been all over Africa. They prize women who are from Ethiopia and from Senegal and from Djibouti." I'm like, "Oh, so they prize North Africans who are lighter skinned?" Sir, this is not helping your argument. It's like, "Oh yeah, men from Nigeria." When you look at all of those royal people, they seek Black women, but from North Africa. I'm like, don't you see what you're talking about? This still propagates the same notion of marrying or being closer to someone who is closer to white, or favoring somebody who is closer to white. They might not be fully white, but they have those features. They might have a smaller nose, lighter skin, smaller lips, etc. And I'm like thinking to myself, don't get angry. Don't be calm and patient. Just let him move along. So that was one instance that I actually experienced where somebody was completely delusional to the fact of and what exactly they were saying. And I'm like, this is still hurtful rhetoric that you're spreading. You know, of course, North African women are beautiful, but so are West, East, South, and Central. Like, right. Come on, sir, you can't do that. You can't take one without the other.
Absolutely. KERRI, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so like, I guess where do we start, right? I was just like trying to write down some notes and map it out, but I think we have to start at colorism and how we kind of may think about it in our, like, to our earliest knowledge of understanding how colorism might have started and being portrayed as like the white man's burden, right? And since literally like advertisements began, since the idea of advertising stuff, it has been there have been a lot of advertisements about whitewashing people of color, whether it be literally like washing with soap or right. Just like in other behavioralisms and mannerisms. And that's what I always go back to with everything. It's like, how did we get here? And one thing that I was very fortunate to do, and like this actually went viral for a time when Outkast was actually touring with, like, in the past 3 years or so, Andre 3000 will wear something and it would say people across the world of darker skin like suffer. Why is that? And it's like one thing that I've learned that I am so happy. Well, I hate that it happens, of course, but one thing that I learned is that this is not just a Black thing. And it's an internalized racism. It's internalized racism and colorism across all like multifacets of the world, right? And so that makes it just so much harder to combat it, right? When you understand like it's not just, if it was just a Black thing, then we could figure it out, right? But it's not just a Black thing that's staying in our community, it's a Black thing that's happening in our community, then it's being portrayed through like maybe like some Latinx people that come into our communities as well, or like that we like have community collaborations with. It's transitioning through a cycle, right? And I often go back to like my younger years when I would tell people that like my great grandfather is actually from Honduras, and people will just look at me in shock, like, how is that such a thing when you're such a brown girl, like you're such a darker skinned girl? And so I literally stopped saying it after time, because that I started to internalize, like, is this true? Is this not true? And it wasn't until like me knowing that at a very young age is very empowering for me, right? And so when you get older and you start taking things out of like just, I guess, your vocabulary, however you like approach people, because it's basically bullied out of you, you then pick it up after you've like learned some more about where, like, why it was bullied out of you, maybe, or something like that. And now it's hard, for me to really get back into the culture, because it's something that I didn't tap into when I was younger, because I just didn't think I had a place in that world. That makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so that was actually going to be my next question, was like, as a child, were you impacted by colorism? I know Sharkisha, you touched on it a little bit, and KERRI, you did as well. But if there are other instances, and Mignon, if you want to add to that question, please feel free to do so.
Yeah. Oh, wait, you want to go, Mignon?
No, you can go ahead. No,
I was just going to start with like how exactly what you all say it is in terms of like get out of the sun or wear sunscreen, right? So I stopped wearing sunscreen for a long time because I was just like, well, it's just not gonna make me, it's just gonna make me get light or like stay light or whatever. I stopped actually wearing it. And then I learned that like sunscreen is actually for your health. And that's why I wear sunscreen now, right? Like, I think everything I try to do sometimes, probably between the age of like 23 to 26, where I am now, has been just a act of like being revolutionary and unpacking like past traumas. Like, it's something as simple as sunscreen, but it's something like that my parents would specifically, well, not my parents, but like people around me, and sometimes my parents would specifically say, this is so you won't get dark. And the whole time I'm just like, well, what's the problem with getting dark? And so now I go through life, well, I guess as a teenager, I went through life and was just like, oh, I don't want to get dark and blah, 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 blah. Like, you go through that phase. And now, like, I'm currently still remote, but when I lived in Seattle for a year and plus, I'm just like, okay, can I get dark? Like, when is the sun coming out? Like, it's like, I connect with the sun now, and I understand that it is my friend. And I think that is revolutionary in itself, because no matter like what happens to my skin, like, I'm connected with the sun, I'm taking care of my skin. It's not about getting dark or light. And I think that is revolutionary in itself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks, KERRI, for sharing.
I was going to add that it was pretty much the opposite for me in my household growing up, as far as with, these are my parents. I want to show you guys. So as you can see, my dad is very fair skinned and my mom is darker than him. She's like brown. And so growing up, the conversation of light skin, dark skin, it was always Mignon. No matter what, you are Black. That is bottom line. Like, if we would never refer to one another as light skin or as Creole, or one person is better than the other, like we just wouldn't use that language. So I never felt bad about getting darker or, you know, letting my natural hair go out, because my parents embraced that. And my dad, oh my goodness, I swear he's light skinned, but he's one black dude. He's probably the blackest man I know. For sure, for sure. And he made it known, like anytime somebody would question him and his race, he was quick to correct them. And one thing he would say, or that really put it into perspective for me, was like, people covet light skin, but they don't understand the source of it. This light skin was born out of trauma from our ancestors. While it's something to be proud of as a Black person, the story of where it came from is not something to revel in and to celebrate and appreciate. It came from a slave master raping a slave. And then from there, our light skin was born. That is not something you need to continue to bolster and portray. And when he told me that or taught me that, oh my gosh, it really put it into perspective. I had never proceeded thinking I was light skinned. Thinking I was light skinned until I got around more people who were darker than me. And they're like, oh my God, you're light skinned. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm Black just like the rest of you. How could you say that? Like, it was almost like an insult to me, because I'm like, I'm just as Black as the next person, you know? And now I see, you know, more so of the differences, absolutely. But it was never how I was raised. It was never an issue. My dad was just as Black as my mom, and we were just one big Black family, no matter the shade. So yeah, that was my upbringing that I'm so incredibly thankful for, you know, not having to feel bad about the way I looked or about how dark I got. I always wanted to see how dark I could get in the summer. It was always pushing the limits as much as I can. Absolutely.
I think growing up in New Orleans is like, you know, it's unique in itself, but like, you know, because of the history of, you know, slavery and racism, like, I think as a Black person living in New Orleans, you can really see like the effects of colorism, especially with like, you know, your friend groups early on, and like, depending on what school you go to. Because me and Mignon went to private Catholic schools, and like, at least I noticed, like, we had a sister school that was like right, you know, like 5 minutes away from us, not even, called Dominican. And the Black girls who went to that school, you know, tended to hang out. And I think there was like, you know, they had similar features, you know, light skin, good hair, you know, they would always have their hair flat iron. And then there was always like at least one or two like darker skin girls in the group. But like, you know, I've always been taught like your vibe attracts your tribe, you know, your community will come as long as you're, you know, just authentic, your authentic self. But like my mom is, you know, similar to Mignon's dad. My mom's maiden name is Long, and so her side is like French, Spanish, Creole, whatever you want to call it. So my mom's side of the family looks, you know, completely different than my dad's side. And so as a child, I kind of struggled, you know, with the light skin versus dark skin thing, because I was kind of in the middle, you know, hence my skin color. But like, I remember growing up, my cousin Danielle, I've always been jealous of her hair. Like, you know, she had like that super like loose coil, you know, hair. And I've always been jealous of it because I had a little more kinky, like really thick hair. So I remember as a child, I was like, Mom, I like, or like, you know, I always wanted my hair straight. I always wanted to be, you know, this like one appearance that I would see on TV. And I remember just like, I used to internalize that all the time. And I don't really think, you know, I used to have a lot of conversations with that about my mom, and how like jealous of how, you know, how jealous I was of her side of the family versus my dad, just because of, you know, their light skin and their features. And so this is actually a topic that we're going to go into next, which is featureism. And I don't know if you've heard about the phrase or, you know, the word, but featureism basically says that Black women who have aspects of European features can be praised and receive better treatment. So when you look at faces of like prominent Black celebrities, you know, what features of theirs are the ones that are traditionally praised or focused on? Can you think of?
I would say their lips or their noses. Yeah.
I would say eyes too, because I'm just thinking about like Real Housewives of Potomac and like Giselle. She has like, she's known as the green-eyed bandit.
I love Giselle, but I just think that that is so played out. But I will also say hair.
Hair, I was gonna say hair.
I would say hair is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Especially in the natural hair movement, like the closer your hair is to like being like looser curls, the more like praise you get. So if you have like 4A, B, C hair, unless your hair is really long, you just kind of get criticized a lot more for it. Like, oh, it doesn't look as good or whatever. It's not quote unquote good hair in the Black community.
Are we also referring to features that people are born with, or maybe things that people have added or like done?
I think it's a combination of both,
Because okay, so
yeah.
So I have this theory that I don't harp on it for too long, but I always had this theory that Kehlani like made it further with like her face tattoos and stuff as a light-skinned woman, where a dark-skinned Black woman will probably not be able to do that. And so I love Kehlani. We share the same birthday, exact same birthday, same age and everything. And it's not a hate thing. It's just like, I do wish for a world that darker skinned women can see success like that in their freedom, right? And not have to be self-conscious about things, because I want what she has for every woman that wants to do that,
Absolutely.
Speaking of colorism in the media, this is also another theory that my boyfriend has as far as the light skin agenda with ESPN. If you look at all of their female reporters and announcers, they're all light skinned women. And there's one after another. Every time you turn on the TV, it's a new one. And she's just as light as the last one. And it's, at first I was like, really, is that the trend? I thought it was just one person. And I'm like, oh, that's because they're all starting to look the same.
Yeah.
It is the light-skinned woman agenda that's happening. It's unfortunate. And I love to see Black women in high places, but we don't need diversity amongst those Black women.
And I'm sure, Michelle, you can attest to this too, and KERRI, since we're pretty much have been involved in, the journalism game. But like, just TV news anchors, I've had this like pretty much the standard mold, for ever since, the 80s, back when Oprah was a big thing. I think like we're slowly progressing to more like of inclusive, like Black women representation on air, but I still think it's a big gap that we have.
I think it's a huge gap, right? Because we're not too far away from that time period where it was Black women were afraid to wear their natural hair on TV. Like, I'm going to be frank with you. I sometimes think that it is my like nose, my like heavy cheeks, my sometimes darker skin if I don't have the right lighting. And someone specifically told me that I changed my hair up too much and that no one would like hire me because I should keep it to one hairstyle, right? Like, so all the other things are assumptions, but that is a specific thing that a hiring manager for a news organization told me. And I think we're very, very far away from like getting to that realm of freedom where we see so many Black women that look like us. But we also need to understand that just because we see those Black women that look like us on TV, we don't know A, what they had to go through to get there.
Right.
And we don't know B, how long they're going to be there, because how long they're going to be willing to deal with other underlining things that still might be happening, right? Like microaggressions, like blatant racism and things like that, that also happen in the workplace. Like sometimes I do feel like, what if you would have just stuck it out a little bit longer, like the rest of them, right? But it was not for me to like walk through that trauma. Like it wasn't for me to walk through that trauma. That's not what I wanted for myself. But it's still going to be a long time coming, because I do think that even though representation is there, if there is not someone on the inside continuing to push that agenda for representation, right? So if we have one person that says, all right, we're going to make the decision to hire like more Black women in this particular region, right? What happens when that person leaves, right?
Right.
And that's my thing. It's just like, we can have as much representation as we want and as we see today. But I hate to be the pessimist about that sometimes with people, but I'm like, don't let this representation fool you, because we did get a Black president in 2008, and look what happened after that. So the idea of representation is taken into account, but more systemic and institutional change like is always mandated, is always required.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very valid points and really good points, KERRI. So thank you so much for sharing. Just quickly, I just want to turn your attention to the chat. Something that Janice just posted. She said, regarding futurism, does anyone remember the controversy with gymnast Gabby Douglas regarding her hair? And she said, Janice said, I think the criticism at the time came from Black women. Gabby Douglas was at the height of her, gymnastics career. And I just remember, all the really negative comments about her hair. So if any of y'all have like any reflections from that time period, maybe like the comparisons between her and Simone Biles with the treatment of how, she was covered in the media.
I think with Gabby Douglas, I remember it was because her hair wasn't like just done or whatever the edges. And I think a lot of that comes with respectability politics. There's a fraction of Black people that believe you have to be presentable to white standards to be, considered or valued or respected. And I think that's where it came from. They were well-intentioned, but wrong. And the idea that you need to look a certain way to garner respect, like she has that on her own right. And we never do that. You never really see that with white people. They be just messy bun looking all kinds of the way, and no one questions it. No one even, it's not taken into consideration. It really only happens with Black women. The same like with the bonnet situation. The idea that we have to look a certain way in public, because if we don't, Black people, white people are doing Black people an injustice, and it's just not the case. We can look how we want to look, and we deserve and we are entitled to all the respect and the equality that everyone else gets. So I think that's where it comes from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'll do my clap reaction for that one. Anyone else have comments about the Gabby Douglas scenario?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, go ahead.
I was going to say that, yes, I have been there before as far as, or SHARKISHA, you put it in perspective for me as far as wanting your hair to be appropriate or acceptable to white people. It's like, that's so true. That's why I think that way sometimes when I go into the workplace and I'm like, okay, how's my hair going to be today? Can I wear it this big? I don't know. It might be a bit much today. Or one of the biggest accomplishments or latest accomplishments for my hair that I have for myself, I do twist outs all the time. And when I'm at home, I keep my twists in for like a week or so. And I never wear my twists out to work or to anything professional. But I put them in a cute style and I went to work with my twists and I was like, I did that. I got home and I talked to my boyfriend, I'm like, look, I know this is probably not that big of a deal, but I wore my twists at work today. I felt comfortable being in my own hair, in my own skin, in the workplace, being the only Black person in that entire office. It was a milestone. And I still find myself on that path of debunking some of our internalized racism. And that by all means was one of them. I still find a way to stick my edges every time. I'm making progress. But to my twist, I was like, I feel free. Nobody's made any comments because nobody really cares. It's me that cares so much. It's me putting all of that pressure on myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something I need to work on. But I always have my mom in the back of my head, Mignon, you got to keep it tight. Keep it tight. You never know who you're gonna see. Keep it up. You never know. Mignon, what are you doing? Why is your hair not all the way together? Put a little something on your face. Come on. And I'm thankful for, you know, how she's taught me to be presentable, but at the same time, I've noticed how it can be to my detriment, especially to my own personal anxieties and in terms of how I'm going to be received at work.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Go ahead, KERRI.
I just wanted to co-sign everything you both said. Y'all just wrapped that into like an interwoven thing that we all experience and say this so eloquently. And one thing that I like to point out sometimes is that we can't hate our mothers for passing down what they know. It's sometimes I used to like get a little frustrated, but I find myself in the same predicament, right? Like, can I wear my twist in today? Like, because the time that it takes to like keep yourself up most times as a Black woman, it takes a little bit longer. And luckily my colleagues know that like we just a lot of it longer. And so like actually like I've had these conversations not at like previous jobs but at my current job to where like, yeah, we know like your hair appointments might take a little bit longer, so like if you need to leave early, and it's not coming from a level of disrespect, but it is coming from a level of like, come as you are, do the work, and just be present. Because so often as Black women, we think we have to present ourselves in a particular manner to like just get seen or just get heard and just to be respected, right? And one thing that I've learned is like, keep yourself together for you. And that means like, you do what you have to do in the time that you have, right? So I've been to that point as well where I was like, oh my God, can I like wear my twist in at work today? Like, what do I do? But I've also been at that point where like, I'm definitely putting on my silk beanie or my beret, and they're not going to see that I'm conditioning my hair under here because guess who woke up too late to wash their hair, right? It's like, you're there, you're doing the work. Okay. Like, if I do understand that I have been taught by older Black women, like keep a pashmina, keep a pair of black heels, right? In your desk drawer. And I do understand if someone important is going to come through, but like you're important too. So, I mean, you pick yourself up and you get together like that every day. And it's like, there is no sort of sense of like professionalism when it comes to like how you look. I think there is a sense of like, yeah, like I'm not going to wear what I wear like on the streets or to the club, like to work. But when it comes to your hair, like every time I took a headshot, I wanted straight hair and stuff like that, right? And there was this one time where I took a headshot with like my really natural hair. And when it comes to those things, no one really ever pays attention to that. You know what they pay attention to? The smile that you have in your picture, the composition of your photo, maybe. Like no one is looking at how your hair was and how it was professional. And I think I appreciate you all for saying what you said, because I'm just rambling now, but y'all said the most beautiful things.
Oh no, we never have rambling on here. I mean, this is real talk. So whatever comes to mind, we open that, we invite that to come in. And so, yeah, Janice, MSNBC anchor, Zerlina, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Maxwell, is revolutionary with her natural hair on air. And there's also, I'm on Instagram, and there's also an Instagram page called Curly Girls on Air, started by a Black woman who's an anchor in Atlanta, one of the CBS affiliates, I think. But yeah, so it's just been great because I remember when she had started that page originally, and, it's just grown in followers and, different Black women on air, like showing how they're, wearing their hair at work today. So, it's definitely something that I love to see. And, I'm excited for, just her page and her following to keep growing, to just say it's okay. Like our hair is so versatile. which also makes it a challenge. But like, you know, there's so many things that we can do with our hair. You know, we should just try to embrace it and, you know, embrace our natural beauty. So the next question that I want to go to, so, you know, we're familiar with, you know, the light skin privilege, you know, in all aspects, the workplace, school, you know, who you associate with. Is there, based on the context of futurism, do you think there is such thing as dark skin privilege? And why, if you agree?
I would say in a way there's dark skin privilege within the Black community of the darker you are, the more true to being Black you are, the more authentic you are, and the more you are accepted by your own people in a way. Say for instance, my boyfriend, he's a lot darker than me, and he always makes fun of me because I'm light skinned. He's like, I see you, you know, your people over there in Germany and in France and stuff like that, always making jokes about Blackness because I am fairer skinned. And I feel like sometimes our darker counterparts are more likely to gatekeep in a way as far as who's Black and who's not, who's true blue as far as their Black experience more so than others. A lot of light skinned people are discredited because they are lighter skinned, and thus their Black experiences don't necessarily count. I understand that there is absolutely light skin privilege. That is undeniable. Like that is 1000% a fact. I'm pretty sure the fact that I am fair skinned has allowed for me to have opportunities that I would have probably not have otherwise had if I was darker skinned. It's not something that I would be able to know, but definitely in high school and college, I was tapped on the shoulder to be that token, to be in front of, you know, the cameras, to be on the billboard, to be, you know, in front of customers sometimes. You know,
Sorry, you were cutting out.
Oh.
You just cut out like 5 seconds, so it's fine. Just continue. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So definitely see the light skin privilege at play several times, but I do also see the dark skin privilege within the Black community also.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Anybody else want to comment about light skin versus dark skin privilege, or if there is such a thing as dark skin privilege?
I think what she said, you're right about the whole, like the closer you are to being dark skinned, the more like, okay, you're actually Black and not, you're like, your experiences are more believed. I think like when you talk about like any kind of oppression or any issues that you've gone through, you're more likely to be taken at face value. Whereas if you are light skinned, it's less like, I mean, you'll be taken advantage, but you'll probably be met with a little bit of a side eye, like, yeah, girl, I get it.
Yeah, what you know about that?
Yeah. So, and it does, and it's not okay. And I've seen it even like on like TikTok, like if someone is light skinned and talking about their experience, you'll see it in the comments. And then, are you even Black? And I've seen even like white people, like when I've seen like there's someone that I follow, and I think she's biracial, and she's talking about like systemic racism, and they'll have like white people in the comments saying, you're not even really Black, so you don't count, or you're not able to speak on these issues because X, Y, and Z, basically discrediting her, which is not okay to do. So I think, but if I were on a platform and I were talking and I were basically verbatim saying what she was saying, no one would question it. They would assume that I'm right. And you know, oh my goodness, how can I be better, kind of a thing. So I think that there is that. But on the flip side, there's like, when it comes to like the strength and the weakness, like if you're light skinned, if you're a male and you're light skinned, it's harder to, because you're automatically, at least that I've seen, not allowed to be strong, or you know, like you'll see like memes and it'll be like how dark skinned men handle issues and how light skinned men, and they'll be like laying on the rug with a lollipop and like, you know, basically saying that to be light skinned is to be effeminate and to just not have on ease, which is on the flip doesn't allow vulnerability in dark skinned people, but that's just one of the other aspects of it.
Yeah, I agree. KERRI, you have any thoughts about, you know, this this question?
No, I actually don't know how to answer this question.
I understand. I understand. Yeah, it's definitely like something to think about because it's just also complex, you know.
I think it's
Just
complex in the way that I was actually told that I wasn't Black enough, and
really,
even with my yeah.
wow.
So I think that's why it's complex. Of like, I don't have enough experience or knowledge to speak on if like how it plays out in everyday life, and I've probably experienced certain things that I just have not like looked into to see if that's what, you know, if that's where it comes from. But I can't recall an experience at this very moment.
Mhm. Gotcha. So my next question is, I guess, more complex too, which is colorism about white people's self-hatred or communities of color self-hatred, or white people's racism?
I think it's about both. I think there's like this internalized hatred because um, the representation is not there. So when you're constantly seeing people who don't look like you coming into these like higher positions or reaching these areas or giving these platforms, and no one that looks like you is happening. The people who look like you are relegated to like in social media. Not social media, in like yeah, like in the movies, they're like the maids or they're the drug dealers or the gangbangers, and you see in public someone who's lighter gets more attention, and you also recognize that for a very long time, for you to progress and to excel in life, you needed to be light skinned, you needed to straighten your hair, you needed to find ways to assimilate to more Eurocentric features for you to be given opportunities to progress, to move, to get banks, to buy a home. And the further away from that you were, the further away the opportunities were. So it's kind of hard not to internalize that and think that that has something to do with you when necessarily it wasn't, just the system that you were born into, which is why I think you see it, it's not just like Black and white, like across the country, where a lot of these colonized nations, like if you go even to India, like the fairer you are, the more revered you are, because to be white is to be considered like the goal, you know? So the closer you are to that goal, the more valuable you have. So I think that for some people, it takes a lot to unpack all that, especially when you have it like being thrown at you at work, you know, online, and social media, and just in the people around you. It's kind of hard to just constantly be combating that and telling yourself that who you are as you are is enough. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And it's just, you know, it gets even more complex because, like you said, it's happening pretty much around the world. You know, everyone has their own, you know, class system and, you know, how they see others and how they put people on the hierarchy. So, yeah, I think it's both as well. Any other thoughts about the question at hand?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you, Sharkisha. It is definitely a matter of both. Also, it's saying my connection is unstable, so can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine on our end.
Okay, cool. So it's definitely about both. But it all started with the racism, because when I'm pretty sure I explained this before, that when colonizers and slave owners first captured the slaves, there were hundreds of slaves to maybe one or two slave owners. So as a means to control the masses, what do? Break down their person, take away their identity, change their names, cut their hairs, make them speak English, make them believe in your beliefs and your God and your Bible at the time, as a control tactic. Once you have all of those facets controlled within their minds, oh my goodness, you have a reign over hundreds of people for hundreds of years. And that notion of you're less than, get away from what your original origins are, it was propagated, it was filtered through the communities for generations and upon generations, to the point of where white people's racism wasn't the sole factor contributing to colorism. It was then the internalized self-hatred that happened because of what started from the beginning. It took on its own form. It embodied its own sort of institution that was just propagated by the people. you know, it has been ingrained in our minds to hate who we really are and where we come from. And it's going to continue to be that way unless we change the narrative, unless we continue to promote Black beauty, Black power, Black excellence. Self-esteem is the only way we can overcome so many of the things that are plaguing us. If we truly see our worth, see the power in banding together, oh my gosh, we could take over the world. And that's what the slave owners knew from the jump. They saw our power. They saw how we could command a room or take over the world if we wanted to, but you have to break down the mind. And unfortunately, it was very successful, and we're still trying our hardest to band together in order to defeat, you know, the powers that be that have been put in place for so many years.
100%. KERRI, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, so I agree that it is white people's racism that in turn to internalize racism. It does stem from a place of racism, but then it comes to in fruition when people not only feel the need, but actually like desperately need to assimilate to stay alive. And also that assimilation then turns into a way of life for decades, right? It's not like people no longer see it as assimilating or code switching like back and forth, right? It's like, no, we're just gonna like keep walking on this path because it's worked out for us. So like, because oftentimes I go back to thinking, when I was younger, I did not understand like passing and why people would pass. But I understand that that's none of my business, first of all. Secondly, like people had to do what they had to do. And if you could assimilate that deeply into white culture, then you probably just wanted to save your life, right? Or wanted to create a much better life. Yeah. That's all I can say is that it's now like taken a form of internalized racism. And it's also still heavily projected by white media, right? That we have to watch out for. And it's projected also by our own media, but mainly white media. I always like to use like the Real Housewives franchise and things about colorism and racism a lot, because if you were talking about it earlier, actually, Sydney, Potomac, right? So between Potomac and Real Housewives of Atlanta, that is a study in itself of Black women, internalized racism, internalized colorism, experiences that they want to push on other Black women, and how it can also come from like leading network executives, right? And who makes the decisions, and how these shows are set up. Because I've watched so many storylines play out where I'm like, a Black person can't keep egging this on.
Right.
Like there are storylines that you will watch play out and you're just like, okay, if a Black person is letting that happen, they want this person to like just ruin themselves because they brought this idea into fruition anyways. Like the whole like green-eyed bandit thing, like there are light scenarios from Real Housewives of Atlanta. The most, I guess the most specific scenario that might come to mind with this was when Eva said that Shamia was Black, but not with a Q. So if you all know the band Black, like, yeah. So, yeah, that's, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not just like perpetuated from white media that we watch, where they're like, oh, like this person's too dark or this person's too that. It's literally in our own media that's fed to us by the people that we know and love, right? So these women on Real Housewives of Atlanta, we all have some sort of not personal connection, but like we all like them. Maybe if we don't like them directly, we like an artist that likes them too, right? And so it all comes back around in a circle where it impacts us, and it still is perpetuated through us. Yeah, girl, Black is a band from the 90s. They're most best known for Bring It On and stuff like that. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing that, KERRI. Yeah, it's just like, with the Housewives franchise, the fact that there's two, like, basically all Black cast members are the ones that I watch. I don't watch the other franchises. I'm just not, into that. But like, Housewives of Atlanta and Potomac are the ones I watch. And even I got into Married to Medicine. And, I don't know if any of you guys watch that, but I like the show. I think it shows like, a range of not only doctors, but like doctors' wives. And like, I haven't really seen, so much colorism within that franchise versus like Potomac and Atlanta. But, I think it adds, I guess, some value and like empowerment to, like Black women can be successful. Like, there's 2 OBGYNs on the show, and there's also a primary care doctor on the show. And so it's kind of like uplifting for me to watch, even though they have their own, drama within their friend groups, but like kind of reassuring thing to see in the media, at least to my end. But if anyone else has any other comments on that question before we move on to our next question, go ahead.
Yes, I do have another comment. So when KERRI brought up the media, it's also within music. When you think about who owns a lot of record labels, they're not Black. And those same record labels are selling or putting out music that is detrimental to the Black community. I like rap music, sure, absolutely. But I would be a fool to say that some of the language that is portrayed is completely detrimental. It's drugs, it's sex, it's money, and it's nonstop. And the only way that you can achieve those things is if you ball, if you rap, or if you're in the streets. That music and sometimes the message that is portrayed, as well as the way the actual stars carry themselves, is propagating that message to the youth over and over again, that you are nothing unless you have the biggest chain known to man, or you're nothing unless you have designer this or racks to put on your arm and flex. If you don't have something to flex, you're not worth anything. So what does that tell a little Black boy that's in the project? You're not anything unless you have this. And it's not, the music isn't saying, hey, get an education and get a career that'll lead to that. No, it's saying you need to do everything but that to get there. And that is continuing to bolster that self-hate or the white people's racism that was started. That music, while I like some of it, I'm not as easily influenced as most. So it definitely has a detrimental effect on our community. And it's also being portrayed or pushed out to our communities by the white owners of these record labels.
Go ahead, KERRI. You were about to say something.
Well, I was just thinking about the video that we were watching earlier and thinking about what MIGNON is saying. I didn't know how much colorism was in music that I listened to as a child. And I think that is like the most important thing to think about, right? Because so many times parents will say like, oh, let's cut this off because of this curse word, or let's cut this off because it's talking about sexually explicit stuff. But you never turn up the Lauryn Hill, or you'll never turn up the Nas If I Rule the World when you turn the other songs off, right? Like you will like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if that is what we want to listen to, like we have to meet each other somewhere where we are like empowering ourselves through our music, and making sure that that music is brought to a higher pedestal. Because one thing that I will say is I love that like Afro beats are getting higher and higher on the charts these days, because when I look at those videos, I see women that look like me, actually. Like they don't have a simple straight nose. They might have like puffy cheeks. Like I just see more women that I can identify with, no matter where they come from across the world, but I just see more women that I can identify with. And I think that's most important, because growing up, I mainly identify with Paramore. Um,
Yeah, I think
but
we all
yeah,
have
like
punk
beautiful
rock
Black woman.
stage.
Yeah, like I'm glad like I never really got in too deep into like Lil Wayne and things like that. But but for me, I say I identify with Paramore because it was easier and better for me to identify with Paramore, Lauryn Hill for self like creativity and self-exploration rather than identifying with someone like Lil Wayne that I knew would never go for a girl like me, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think like, you know, when we were growing up, you know, we had CDs and, you know, things like that. And now that we're in the streaming era, I find it as like, you know, a great, I guess, tool resource for me to just like open up my mind to like, you know, different musicians and different artists, you know, Black artists, international artists that are all like, you know, being represented, you know, all across the spectrum. So it's opened my eyes to like really get, you know, out of that mainstream, like Lil Wayne, you know, Pop Smoke kind of things and just like expand my knowledge of music. And I think that like, you know, I don't know if you listen to the internet or, you know, bands like that or like contemporary R&B artists, but like they have great content. But I think like the other thing we have to think about is like, you know, people that are in certain communities, do they have access to these streaming platforms or are they only listening to things on the radio? So it's like, it's, you know, repeating and, you know, this repetitive cycle that they're only receiving the same amount of type of music, you know, things like that. So I don't know, that was just something that I thought about.
That is such a good point, Sid, because I watched the BET Awards not too long ago. And when you look at the artists that are nominated for awards, there's no K Tronada, there's no internet, there's no, who's another cool indie Black person I can think of? I can't think of.
Lucky Day.
Lucky Day. Singers like that, they're not considered mainstream Black artists. So their music isn't going to be on the BET Awards. They're not going to be exposed to the younger crowd. And it blows my mind. That is Black music. That is the Black sound. That is Black culture. But no, we have butts shaking all over the screen constantly, which is fine. Be empowered. But that's not all that we are. And I felt like that was a lot of what the message was, you know, we'll limit ourselves to this rap music and this portrayal of a Black woman, and then we'll stick with that. And I was thankful that the whole message of the awards was the year of the Black woman or something like that, which was great. But at the same time, I would love to see some diversity of the artists, of the music, of the sound, and of the portrayal of Black culture holistically, not just one mainstream, you know, section of it that they want us to see.
Yeah, I
agree. Go ahead, KERRI, sorry.
No, I was just saying I agree with that. I think what I don't want to do is lose the Black culture that is mainstream, right? And think that, you know, that people shouldn't, just because I have no real interest in really connecting with it, that other people shouldn't be able to connect with it. Because one thing that I have come to grow and love as like I become an older Black woman, every Black woman, right? Like it was a thing to like really like hate Black girls from the hood. And I'm just like, wait, why now? I'm like, why did we downplay like their creativity, their brilliance, their tenacity, their endurance? Like I don't get it, right? So I want there to be a place where we all come together as like Black people and say like, we are all very different, but we all contribute something, no matter what level we contribute it at. This is how we make our world turn around and we keep it in our circles.
Definitely. Anyone else have any comments before I turn to a question that refers to the natural hair community?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to like what you were saying, Mignon, as far as like the over-sexualization of Black women. I think that is a thing. And I think it stemmed from way back in slavery times where Black women were being raped. And it came with the idea that like white women needed to be protected. They were innocent, they were virtuous, and Black women were just sexual beast. And so as such, they could not be raped or whatever, because that's just who they are. And it fed into, like, if you go back and even see images of like even young Black children, the minstrels that they did where they were over sexualizing the children, just giving me an idea that that's just who we are. We're just overly sexual beings. And I think that that's played up a lot and in the music industry. And I think part of it, I get it, is empowerment, but I think part of it is like these like overseas, these white producers who are like saying, this is what sells, you know, this is what, you don't really see that a lot with non-Black artists, really, where we're just completely butt naked in the video, shaking on the ground, breathing, which I'm fine, do what you want to do, women empowerment and all that, but I do think that's part of it. Like, it's just kind of like objectifying us a lot more. And I think that is part of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to return to a point that Sharkisha made earlier on in the talk. You know, we were talking about, I guess, featureism, and we, you know, touched on the subject of hair, and like, you know, loose coils are, you know, seen as like more favorable and things like that. How do you think the natural hair community is in terms of like, is it inclusive? Is it supportive for those who are a part of it, for those who wear natural hairstyles? Like, can you talk about your experience with, you know, engaging with other women of color in terms of like, you know, natural hair, things like that?
As someone who has like 4C hair, I don't find it to be all that inclusive. I think that even a lot of the products, I mean, now that I'm getting, I've been like 8 years, so I'm getting a little bit better with it, but even a lot of the products don't really cater to our hair. And you'll see, I mean, maybe like on YouTube, you'll be able to find some more like 4C hair, but like just in the community as a whole, it's considered like good hair if you have like 3B, 3A, 3C or whatever, maybe 4A. I've even seen it like if I'm out with my kids are biracial. So my son has really curly hair. I don't even know what kind of hair. I don't know. I don't know all the numbers. Anyway, you'll see like other Black people be like, oh, they're gonna have good hair. And I'm just like, there's no such thing as good hair. All hair is good hair. You know, like my hair is good, you know, just as good. It's just as beautiful as his hair, but you'll see mostly from Black people I see. I mean, I've seen some white people, but I kind of disregard them, but it's always like, I don't know why it bothers me more when other Black people say that to me, like, oh, he's gonna have good hair, because it's kind of negating like my hair. I feel like it's kind of just implying that that is the status, and it really shouldn't be. And I also just don't want my kids thinking that's normal, because I don't think it is, and I don't think it's healthy. So yeah.
Yeah, and that makes me think of like, because you mentioned the hair care brands, like, you know, similar to, you know, the music industry, a lot of white people are, you know, behind these hair care companies that are supposed to cater to our hair. And I remember doing a video about this for one of my fellowships, just like, you know, why Black hair care matters. And Mignon was actually a part of the project, you know, just trying to promote Black owned hair care companies that you really don't hear much about, or you may not think, you know, like some people like Shea Moisture think is Black owned when it hasn't been, you know. Now they're trying to cater to more, you know, Black hair and, you know, Black representation now, but like you have to look behind, you know, who's the CEO, who's running things. And so I don't know if you have like any recommendations on, you know, certain hair care products that you like to use or anything like that.
Do I have any recommendations? I what do I use? It's called As I Am. I don't know if you've heard of it. And there's another one called DNA, which is like great. It's great. But I was just gonna add to that what you were saying as far as the hair care products. They don't even teach it in beauty schools. Like, it's not part of the curriculum at all. So I can't just walk into any salon and they know what to do with my hair. Half the time they don't even know what to do with my son's hair. So it's just not, which is why isn't it taught? You know, why don't we know? Like, my sister can do hair really well, but she taught herself, you know. And I find that a lot of the people in the Black community who do know how to do hair learn from like another family member, but there's no place that they can go on a professional level to be certified to do that hair, know, like, and it should be part of the curriculum. It's basically othering us, you know, it's basically saying that this isn't something that's important to know. It's excluding us basically from the table. So yeah, I use DNA, it's called, and it's just great. And I use As I Am. And I have another one that I just got, but I haven't tried, but it's like a all natural. There's like no paraben, no sulfates, no anything in it, no alcohol, obviously. I can't think of the name of it. I'd have to go look at it and get it, but it's been good.
Thank you, Sharkisha. Anyone else?
Yes, I can add that the hair topic is one that's always being talked about in my house, because I grew up, as soon as I was, I think maybe 7 or so, my mom slapped the relaxer in my head. She's like, I can't deal with all of this hair. We need to figure it out and make it manageable, which I understand now that I'm older, thinking of getting myself together with all the hair that I have and then having to get a child together with all the hair that they would have. I can see how it's a lot, by all means. But I'm not always trying to say, come on, guys, let's get natural. You know, let's cut that creamy crack out of our hair, please. Like, let's get it out. Stop doing it. Or my niece, who's 11 now, she wants to go natural. And I keep saying, because they put a relaxer in her hair. And my sister has a hard time brushing hair because she has MS and can't fully open and close her hand. So dealing with straighter hair is easier for her, I must admit. And my mom can only do so much. But I'm like, Malia, come on, you're on your phone all the time. Let's watch some YouTube videos of how to do natural hair. So that way we can start the transition. It's like, okay, but I still don't know how to do it. But she really wants to go natural. And I'm such a big advocate for it. I stopped or decided to go natural freshman year of college, which was 6 or 7 years ago. I don't know. It's been a while. And I haven't looked back since. I love my natural hair, and I've tried different styles. I did my hair like this, and you know, I've been getting creative as I possibly can. And I'm like, the higher the hair, the closer to God is how I look at it. You know, I want my fro as big as possible, but it's always a matter of battling that with my family, the older generation and the newer generation. Come on, just love yourself. Let's stick to our roots. Now it's like, man, get that hippie stuff out of here. Like, stop it. I have to put a relaxer in my hair. I don't want these curls, these naps to get out of control. And I'm like, see, that's the problem. That's the problem. And I haven't flat ironed my hair in over 2 years now. So I'm like trying to convert as many people as I can. It's a lot of work, but it is so worth it to have natural hair. I feel so in touch, I would say. And I was telling my boyfriend, the amount of time that we as Black people spend in our hair is insane. I know my hair on such a deep, intimate level. I feel like I know every strand. We're all friends, and I take care of them. This is my first child. And I feel like that is what it is. And I'm so proud that that's how it is to be a Black person, as far as our hair is concerned.
Yep, I can definitely relate, Mignon. Thank you for sharing that. KERRI, did you want to add anything?
Yeah. So I went natural after the reason for me going natural was actually because I read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I had to do that for a school project. I chose that book because it was just something that I know my sister's reading and stuff like that. So I chose that book. And after like reading that, I was just like, do I want straight hair? Right? I was like, do I want this or do I want this because this is what's been like the thing that, you know, people have told me this is what I should want. And so even when I was natural, though, for some time, I would like straighten my hair to look more presentable at certain points, like, you know, for holidays or for, you know, picture days or for certain things. And now I've gotten to the point where it's like with hair and makeup, it's a choice, right? It's a choice that I take full responsibility of. So it's a choice to say, do I want braids? Do I want to wear my hair natural, right? Do I feel like getting my hair straightened? If it's not something that I want, it doesn't happen because I think I'm going to meet the president. And it's about showing up exactly as you want to show up. But yeah, so like I was saying, basically my thing is now to say like, what do I want to do? And if anyone talks down about my hair, right, we don't go back to them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go back to them. I remember there was a time, I know SHARKISHA mentioned that there was not many people are taught how to do Black hair in beauty colleges. So I'm a good beauty college person, avid person that goes to beauty colleges. And I remember that there was a time when I went to like a Veda Institute, just because I would go there just to like get my hair washed and blow dry. Right. That's literally it, right? I'm just like, I just don't feel like washing my hair. Okay. Like pay someone else to wash my hair real quick. Do you know they started charging extra for like thickness?
Really?
Courses? Yes. And so I called to make, because usually I haven't been there to get my hair done in a long time. And usually most recently I was there for like a facial appointment, and often I'll go for like just like a quick pedicure and manicure. And I called back because I was, again, like, I don't feel like washing my hair. And so I called and I was just like, so I need this, this, and this. And I was like, how much is it going to be? And I was like, because I have really thick curly hair. And so I was just, they said, oh, we'll get you someone that will take care of you, blah, 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 blah. Because you can't call and say like, I need a Black girl. Like that's also another thing that like you can't call and say when you calling up a random hair salon, right? They don't like that, but they used to charge. And so I called and I said, hey, do you guys still charge for this? And they were like, no. I was like, good, I'm glad you don't. Like, I didn't get into the underlying factors of it, but it's kind of racist to charge extra for thick, coarse, curly hair, because who else is going to really walk in with thick, curly, coarse hair that enough for you to charge extra for? And they would make things like, oh, it's just because we have to use more product or this or that. And you know what? I don't care what you have to do. I don't care. And I will stress that to the ends of me, because that is a part of me that really hated my hair for a long time. Even when I started to go natural, I was like, well, I actually want this curl pattern, right? Because my sister had this particular curl pattern, or, I know that one section of my hair is this curl pattern. So why can't the other section be this curl pattern? One thing that I made a promise to myself, that no matter how well someone does my hair, if they don't speak highly of my strands, like each strand, if they don't speak love into my hair, then I can't go to them. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because those are the people that will always say, you ever notice that there are some natural hairstylists and they just want to straighten it? And I'm like, no. Like, that's not what I'm looking for. Right. Like you look under the search of natural hairstylists under like Style Seed or maybe Instagram hashtags and things like that. And everyone just wants to straighten it. And I'm just like, no. I just want us to figure out what we're going to do with this crown. Mm-hmm. And it's a relationship that I have been proud to like, build with someone else, to say like, I love talking to my hairstylist and say like, so what are we going to do? Like, I trust you, blah, 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 because I've been through so many hands of like, we're going to relax this and we're going to, cut this and we're going to straighten this. And now I'm to the point where it's like, I get to show up as myself, as my raw self. And I want someone that wants me to do that too. Mm-hmm.
100%. Thank you for sharing that, KERRI. Definitely, some awesome insights. Oh, it looks like ASIFA is coming in right now. Welcome, ASIFA. I'll give you a second to connect to audio. Welcome, ASIFA. How are you? Good to have you back for a little bit. ASIFA, we were just talking about just like the natural hair community and, the different challenges that we've had with like, you know, how do we wear our hair, and like just within the support of like, you know, the natural hair community, like different things, you know, from different textures of our hair, like how do we balance all of that? But if you would like to have, you know, if you just have any general thoughts on the colorism topic, or maybe a personal experience from you that you would like to share with the group, you can share that now. Okay, that's okay. You can just drop it in the chat. She says her mic is not working. But yeah, feel free to drop that in the chat. And meanwhile, we'll move on to our next question. So I'm going to talk about, you know, bring up social media again. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this term BIPOC, but, you know, it stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. And I've seen it, you know, trending on social media within the past few years or so. But then we also have, you know, the term POC. So I don't know if you guys like have any reactions to BIPOC versus POC. Like, is BIPOC needed? Is it inclusive enough? Or, you know, why can't we just have POC? Why do we need BIPOC? Or, you know, if anyone has any thoughts about that.
I think the reason that we have BIPOC, and I think it is necessary, because when you say people of color, it kind of erases the experience, the Black experience and the Indigenous people experience. I think that our experiences as Black people and as Indian people are separate from other people of color, where they have issues with oppression and systemic racism, but it doesn't touch on like what we had, our generational trauma, as far as like Indigenous people go, where they're basically being forced to live on reservations. Their women are coming up missing, and they're just being othered in a land that was initially theirs. And then you have Black people who have just generation after generation of trauma that's still being perpetuated. I talked about it last night on the Clubhouse chat, where I had to do a paper for one of my classes, and they were talking about like injustice in the justice system. So while we're closing in the gap on basically having like Black people being arrested over more than white people, we were closing that gap. It's still a big gap. We were still seeing a really big like injustice in the sentencing. For example, the darker you are, if you're dark skinned, you're likely to get about 40% of a sentence than someone who is white or someone who is light skin. What the study said is if you have dark skin and if you have what they consider stereotypical Black features, then you're looking at a longer sentence just for someone who have the same socioeconomic background, same crime history, same everything else, the only difference being really the color of your skin. So I think that when you look at that, you have to account for that. Like, yes, there's an issue with minorities as a whole being treated unjustly in this country. There's a separate level of oppression that's happening for Black people and for Indigenous people.
Thank you for sharing those insights, Sharkisha. Anyone else have thoughts on the term, you know, BIPOC versus POC?
So I think they're kind of one and the same in terms of how they're generally used. I do think, like, I agree with Sharkisha, is like that distinction needs to be made for Black and Indigenous people. But I do think it is a term that comes from white liberalism, and that's why I just have a hard time really connecting with that term, rather than just actually spelling out people's like ethnic backgrounds and like where people like, you know, descend from, or like how they want to be like addressed maybe. So like, that's just for an example. Like, I understand it, right? I use it a lot in the work that I do, because it's a thing that I think really originated on the West Coast. And then it worked its way over into the South and East Coast. So I use it quite often, but I don't use it to replace when we are talking about a specific group of people. And I think that's the most important thing. like, for example, if we are talking about Asian Americans or Korean Americans, I'm not going to say BIPOC, right? If we're talking about a Black thing, I'm not going to say like BIPOC. Like, I'm not, just to, what I want to just exclaim is that I'm always going to address the community that we are like addressing in whatever statement that I use, if that makes any sense.
Thank you. ASIFA, yeah, you can try to see if your mic is working. And if you have any comments about the question at hand, you can, you know, say your response now.
So just on the topic of the term BIPOC, I don't have any major issue with it. I never really thought about it deeply, but because I think that I agree with the very last speaker. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, but yeah, I mean, depends on which group you're addressing and how they actually want to be identified. I think that's always very important, not to impose labels on people or groups of people. For myself, I identify as a person of color, and but I do recognize the immense like historical and specific unique historical injustices that Blacks and Indigenous peoples have experienced, especially in the Americas, or in the historical global history, actually. So, however, yeah. So I don't mind, but I think it's important to allow people to identify themselves, and not just presume that you can lump any groups together. But I think there are, I mean, actually, so the great thing is, I was just thinking about this, is the majority, I just read something the other day, someone posted on Facebook, which was that the majority of the world consists of persons of color. So, and yet we're referred to as minorities and, visible minorities, especially in Canada. The term visible minority has been used for decades. And even when we're doing job applications or doing, just filling out sort of, official forms and things like that, we are sometimes asked to voluntarily identify or, as Indigenous or visible minority. And yeah, so it's each person has to decide for themselves, but yeah. That's all I have to say for that. And I'm sorry I joined late, but as you know, I'm in the middle of a work day, so but thank you again.
No worries. We appreciate you, for the time that you're, able to share with us. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else have any other comments on the BIPOC versus POC debate?
I don't have an opinion one way or another.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh wait, said you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry. So I want to move on to one of our couple of last questions. So this one is, why does colorism persist even as we say, hashtag Black Girl Magic, and we proclaim, hashtag Black Lives Matter? Why is colorism still an issue today?
I think colorism is still an issue because it's more than just like there's saying Black Girl Magic and all that. If there is institutional, there's internalized hatred that we need to work on. In addition, is the system still in place that upholds those values, that keep everyone where they are? So basically, until we pretty much revamp the entire system. I'm talking about even just in representation, not only in the media, representation in the stores. Until we see more people who look like us and all these varied roles, and it will continue. I think even just the curriculum, like with critical race theory, I think that's a good start. But even the lessons that their kids are learning in school is just this whitewashed, watered down version of what our history is. So they don't see the accomplishments and things of people of color or Black people. So there's just not enough happening yet. And then we're still, even when we have these things happening, we still have all this pushback. Like an example for me would be the Olympics. What happened with Simone Biles? Like she did something amazing. She completed this triple, whatever, that no one could ever do. And because of because they feel like other people can't do it, they made it illegal, you know? So she, and basically said, oh, it's too dangerous for other people to do. She did it, you know? So it's not impossible, it's just really hard. So I think that until we get rid of like white fragility, until we work on a system as a whole, it will continue to exist.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead,
That
Mignon.
is a really good point, and I agree with all of those points. It's like we have Black Girl Magic and BLM, all of those, but they are alongside those institutions that are still in place. So we're screaming Black Girl Magic, but at the same time, we are not seeing those Black Girl Magic, you know, characteristics or things portrayed in the media, you know, because that is still not the mainstream when it comes to that. In order for us to see real progress when it comes to like the Black self-esteem, we need to tear down the institutions that are not promoting that same message. It's one thing if Black Girl Magic comes from us, from within our community, but it needs to also come from the highest levels of media and communication. It needs to be seen on the news. It needs to be seen on music videos, etc. So it's one thing for us to try our hardest to promote our own selves, but there's still those institutions in place that are keeping us down. And we need to overcome them. You know, we need to take over as opposed to running alongside one another. So that would be my solution to tackling that and why we still see this internalized racism, because it's one thing for us to say it, but if we're not practicing what we preach, it can only go so far.
Right. So I guess my follow-up question is like, how do we apply pressure to media, you know, saying like, you need to focus on these things? Because I feel like an argument from the media will be like, well, look at all the streaming platforms you guys have access to. You know, we have all this content, you know, that's available to you, and you know, you prefer to watch certain shows. So like, you know, I feel like that would be an argument from the media standpoint. So if you have like I guess a counter response to that, what would it be?
Okay, for that, I'll say there isn't a lot of representation in the media, though, not healthy representation. Look at the content where we have mostly Black people. They're basically put into tropes. They're either coming out of poverty or living within poverty, or they're drug dealers, or they're victims of the sister, or they're trying to turn their life around after living a life of crime. So there aren't a lot of healthy stereotypes, even in just regular mainstream movies where the majority of the cast is white. If you do have a Black person, they're either acting as basically just someone who is propping up the main character. There's someone to bounce off of, to maybe highlight the main character even more. So you don't really see that. So it's not a lot of healthy representation for Black people. We can't just get a show, you know, where it's just a family just doing this thing, like the Cosby Show way back in the day. And then when you do have shows like that, that's just chock full of colorism, Blackish, a show about Black people where half the cast is mixed race, you know? So, and then the darkest character is the meanest character. So we don't really have that representation. We have BET, but BET also subscribes to a lot of the tropes. And it's because we don't have a lot of people right now still in those positions and those higher levels. One of these actors, I think his name is Tommy Davidson, I could be wrong. He talked about this, where he goes, like, you go in for a casting call and they're like, we need you to act Black, like we're a monolith. And how you are naturally apparently isn't Black enough for these white executives and these white producers. No, you know what I mean. Black. You know, they're like, no, I'm not sure What do you mean? Black, you know, your mom jokes and, you know, ain't this. And they want you to subscribe to what they believe Black people are. And if you don't fit into those narratives, you are not getting the role. So, and there's always going to be, unfortunately, Black people who subscribe to that. Just like, for example, in an Indian culture, if they refuse to do the accent, you know, they're not going to get the role, you know, even though they're like, I'm not going to do this. This isn't how we all talk. Okay, we'll just find someone else who will. So it makes it really hard to combat that. And it's really hard to get up into those roles and just get the representation that you need. Someone who's sitting at the table that's gonna say, no, that's not okay. That's not what our community looks like. That's not what we do. That's not what we subscribe to. So I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, definitely. ASIFA, did you want to add to anything there?
I just wanted to speak, if I may, about the issue or the topic of hair and internalized racism. As I always mention, I'm from South Africa and I grew up under apartheid for the first 10 years of my life. And at that time, and even now in our communities there, people, especially the older generation, are still very conscious of hair texture and things like that. Because as you know, there was a hierarchy and, you know, Europeans were at the top, and of course they have straight hair, and most of them. But the more African you looked, or the more textured your hair was, like I actually have very thick curly hair naturally, and I sometimes wear it curly. But I remember as a child in South Africa, like it was anybody in the families or even in the community who wore their hair curly or had curly hair, they were, you know, it was not considered, not looked at positively, or, you know, it was just, and had so deeply ingrained in the cultures there. Well, even amongst African, you know, peoples of African ethnicity, because a lot of people are straightening their hair, or, you know, and that's been for decades and things like that. So yeah, it's like approximating whiteness is that's part of the whole impact of racism and white supremacy ideals, right? So that definitely has to change. Like it's starting to change even in South Africa, but it's very, it's one of the aspects of that internalized, you know, self-hatred and things like that, that people are made to feel less than just because of their natural features. So yeah, I guess that's all that I can offer from my perspective. And yeah, growing up, you know, we were always trying to straighten our hair, like going out or something like that, you know, just try to have it smooth. And it's really, it's something that can be deeply ingrained in people's minds. And it goes along with trying to be lighter skinned and just to fit into people's ideals of what is
I guess
the
ideal.
the ideal.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those insights, ASIFA, and your experiences. I want to move on to, we have two last questions to wrap up for today. And the first is, are there any resources, you know, books, music, movies, TV shows, could be social media accounts on TikTok or whatever, that you would recommend to others about the various topics that we touched on today? And you can say them out loud, or you can drop them in the chat, whatever you prefer.
Yes, I'm reading a book right now that I love so much. I will be the first to admit that I don't read as often as I would like, but I was at Costco and I'm like, you pick a book and this is going to be your summer reading. So I did, and it was called The Other Black Girl. And oh my gosh, it is such a great read. It's about this girl who's at a publishing house in New York, and she's the only Black girl in her office until a new Black girl shows up. And it almost has like a Jordan Peele type of spin to it, because there's like a mystery at the end and you have to figure out why this other Black girl is acting the way she is, because crazy things start to unfold. And it is a fantastic read, and I highly suggest it and recommend it to everybody. If you have ever been the only Black person or the only minority in a room filled with white people, the book to read. It'll definitely give you some insights into it, and I relate with the main character a ton. So I highly suggest it. And they touch a lot about colorism and Black experiences, one versus the other, what's the true Black experience versus what's whitewash experience. So highly recommend it. And I will put it in the chat. Oh, I see it's already there. So yes, check it out.
Yes, thank you for dropping that link, Michelle. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Mignon, for the suggestion. And definitely, that's one thing that I am not proud of myself, is I have been doing a lot of reading. And so I need to step my game up. Like, I have a bunch of books that are sitting on my shelves just collecting dust, but that will change. I guarantee all that. Anyone else have any recommendations or suggestions? I think, speaking of music, I love India Ari, and she has, it's an old song, you know, from like, I think the early 2000s, and it's called Video. But basically, you know, we were talking about, you know, the stereotypical Black girl, you know, twerking on music videos. You know, this is kind of like the opposite, you know, she's like, I'm not the average girl on your video. And so it's like, you know, like self-love and, you know, just being your authentic self. So I'll drop her, I think she has the video on YouTube. So I'll just drop that link in there. And while I'm doing that, I like to close things off with a closing question to all panelists. And the question is, how do you celebrate you, your beauty, and what you have to give to the world? If you can just, you know, kind of sum everything up that we talked about today.
Can you repeat the question for me, Sid? I was putting a song in the chat.
Oh yeah, of course. So the question is, how do you celebrate you, your authentic self, your beauty, and what you have to give to the world?
I would say that I am unapologetic. So in every circumstance that I can be in where it's a matter of, to say that my hair is natural and I don't care what other people think, and just having that feeling of not caring what people think, it's so freeing. Oh my goodness. So that's what I bring to the table in every circumstance that I can, where I can bring my Blackness to the table, I do. In every circumstance where I can mentor a young person who I see myself in, I make sure to tell them, hey, this is what you need to believe. You are beautiful, you're amazing, you're worthy, you're enough. And constantly give those affirmations to the young Black girls that I see, because the world is hard as it is. I'm not going to make it harder. I'm going to do everything in my power to help you and bring you up and pass it on to the next generation. I always say that, pass it forward, pay it forward. If someone shows you compassion, if someone shows you compassion, by all means, give it back, pass it on to the next person. And also, whatever you didn't receive growing up when it comes to beauty or self-esteem, you give it to the next girl. You make sure she knows she looks good. You make sure she feels positive and comfortable in her skin if you can. And that's definitely my contribution. That's my celebration of myself and who I am. I celebrate other women and bring them up as much as I can. And I would tell you guys the same thing. Pass it forward. Bring up as many people as you can, and let them know that they're beautiful, they're worthy, and they're able to accomplish anything that they want to accomplish.
Yeah, that made me think of like something I saw on social media recently, or it was like strangers are sometimes like your biggest supporters, you know, the people behind the scenes who are just like watching you do your things and like, you know, secretly like supporting and cheering you on. So I definitely think, about that and how important that is, because it's like, you tend to just think about the people who you know as your support system, but like there could be countless others where you have no idea that are secretly praying for you, thinking of you, wishing you all the best. So yeah. Anyone else would like to share? How do you celebrate you, your beauty, your authentic self, and what you have to bring to the world or offer to the world?
Yeah, I can probably, I think I'm along the lines of you, Mignon, where I'm just kind of like just me in every situation. I own it. I mean, like I revel in myself. So I really love who I am. It took a long time to get to this journey where you're just unapologetically yourself and you just do not care. So that's me. And I'm all about that. And I'm very supportive and I'm a fierce supporter of like everyone, helping them get where they want to go. If I can be a part of that journey and helping you, I'm all for it, because I love to celebrate women. I love to celebrate people in general, especially women of color. That's like a big deal for me. Additionally, because I have some kids, it's important for me to just instill into them now young their value and their worth and just how important and loved they are, and how they do not need that external validation because they are everything already. So that's kind of like, I want to model that for them, and I want to also just show that to them. So that's kind of like how I don't know, and me. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharkisha. ASIFA, did you want to add anything?
So the question is, how do I celebrate? Uh,
It could be how you
sorry.
celebrate yourself, how do you celebrate your beauty, what you
Or
offer to the world.
my own. Yeah. So it's been a lifelong journey and struggle to really appreciate not only just appreciate the way I look. I used to have a lot of issues with that as an immigrant coming to Canada and during my preteen years, and it's taken me many years to come to us, and as I get older, just to come to appreciate how I look and to not care about what other people think. And then because of my own experiences, I'm able to empathize with how what other people are going through when they're uncomfortable with the way they look. And I want everyone, regardless of their background, ethnicity, race, to feel positive about their bodies, and I try to encourage people wherever I can, just to accept how you look. There is no right or wrong way of looking. It's just we are all beautiful, and so that's my core belief. Is like we're created by, it's my belief, God, and so we're all kind of just like, for me, each person is a living miracle, and it's important to treat everyone the same. That's to try to convey the message, or whenever I can, and on social media or in my everyday life, just you have a right to be who you were born. So that's yeah, but it has though been a long, difficult journey of self-acceptance. It's just and it can be very damaging, when you hear messages from people close to you or in your community, society, that you're not good enough. And I want everyone, if my message is to women, especially women of color, that you are enough, and you have a right to celebrate yourself in all your aspects and your beauty as well, your natural beauty. So just go on, do whatever your heart desires, and follow your dreams. So, and don't let anything stop you. So.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you guys said have been spot on. This is a lifelong journey, and life is tough. Life is tough, and we all know, based on experiences and, personal battles. But, I really appreciate you guys for just being open, honest, and sharing your insights about all this. So before we close, I do want to turn it back to our founder and publisher for Shades Magazine, Michelle FITZHUGH-CRAIG, before I end with the wrapping quote.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Keisha, to KERRI, to ASIFA, MIGNON, and of course, Sydney for joining in the conversation today and sharing your thoughts, your personal viewpoints, and just opening yourself up as you always do, to the topic at hand. So we appreciate you, and thank you too, again, celebrating our first anniversary, our first birthday. And for all of you who have not only taken part in the discussion, but also audience members who have been with us throughout the years, especially, I won't name names, you know who you are, who have supported us. We thank you, we appreciate you, and we look forward to you supporting us and helping us spread the word about Real Talk and Real Talk Plus in year 2. If you have any questions about today's talk or anything having to do with the discussion or about Shades Magazine, or if you have ideas or future topics, or if you'd like to be a part of the Shades Magazine team or a member of EWIP, please contact us at info.shadesmagazine@gmail.com, or you can DM us at any of our social media accounts. A final reminder that today's discussion was recorded and will be uploaded for viewing and sharing early next week. Additionally, the opinions, viewpoints, and/or personal endorsements expressed in any published print, audio, or video content are those of the individual only and do not necessarily represent the views of Shades Magazine or EWIP. Be sure to follow us on all our social media networks and join us every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific time for Real Talk Plus on Clubhouse. And turn it back over to you, Sydney.
Thanks, Michelle. So this quote is from one of my favorites, Maya Angelou, who said, "I must undertake to love myself and to respect myself, and as though my very life depends upon self-love and self-respect." So I think that's a good, summary quote for everything that we talked about today, especially regarding our last question. So with that being said, thank you everyone for joining. Have a great, great weekend, and please stay safe. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Bye. Have a blessed weekend.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.